Top 10 ghost towns in California that will disturb you. They're still out there. Towns that existed, then vanished, and nobody warned you about what was left behind. California, sunshine, Hollywood, dreams. That's what people think when they hear the name. But far beyond the city lights, deep inside the deserts, high in the mountains, there are places the world forgot. Towns with no people, buildings untouched for decades, empty streets that somehow still feel occupied. Nearly 300 ghost towns are scattered across California. Most are hidden from tourists. Most people will never see them. These are the top 10 ghost towns in California that will disturb you. And by the end of this video, you may never want to visit them. Number 10, Saltdale. Deep in Kern County, inside the Mojave Desert, sits a place where silence feels unnatural. Saltdale was founded in 1914 around one thing: salt. A massive dry lake nearby contained huge salt deposits, and companies rushed to harvest them. Families moved in, homes were built, a post office opened, children grew up under the desert sun. For decades, the town survived entirely because of the salt industry. Then everything collapsed. By the 1940s, demand fell sharply. Jobs disappeared almost overnight. Families packed their belongings and left one by one. The salt plant finally shut down in 1975. But what remains today is far stranger than ordinary decay. The salt never left. It still covers the ground, still blows through the air, still clings to the abandoned structures, and slowly, it's consuming them. Walls crumble from chemical corrosion, metal twists and dissolves. Buildings are being eaten alive by the very thing that created the town in the first place. Saltdale is a town being destroyed by its own history. Number 9, Dublin Gulch. Most ghost towns leave behind broken buildings. Dublin Gulch left behind caves. Near Death Valley, workers arrived here in the late 1800s looking for opportunity, but the area had almost no wood, no brick, and no building materials. So they carved homes directly into the volcanic rock hillsides. Entire rooms were cut into stone by hand. Sleeping areas, fireplaces, storage spaces. One even included a garage carved into the earth itself. People lived inside the mountain, and then one day, they were simply gone. The caves remain almost perfectly intact today. Dark entrances stare silently across the desert. Nobody knows exactly when the final residents left. Nobody knows what their final night here looked like. Only the empty stone rooms remain, waiting. Number 8, Llano del Rio. In 1914, a group of idealists traveled into the Mojave Desert with a dream. Not gold, not silver, a perfect society. They built a socialist utopia called Llano del Rio. More than 1,000 people joined the experiment. Homes were constructed, businesses opened. A hotel appeared in the middle of the desert. They even published their own newspaper called the Western Comrade. For a brief moment, it seemed like they had created paradise. Then the water disappeared. The desert gave them hope, and then took everything back. The river they depended on became unreliable, and within just 3 years, the entire town collapsed. People abandoned their homes and scattered. Today, only fragments remain: a chimney, crumbling foundations, empty land where hundreds once believed they were building the future, a dream that survived less than 1,000 days. Number 7, Ballarat. Hidden deep in Panamint Valley near Death Valley sits Ballarat, a place so isolated that reaching it feels like entering another world. Founded in 1898, Ballarat existed to support nearby gold miners working high in the Panamint Mountains. At its peak, around 500 people lived here, and somehow the town had 7 saloons. That alone tells you what kind of place Ballarat was. Hard men, long nights, violence, alcohol, heat. Then the gold disappeared, and so did the people. Today there are no restorations, no gift shops, no guided tours, only ruined buildings collapsing into the desert floor. Rusting machinery sits untouched under the burning sun. Wild burros wander empty streets where miners once fought and drank themselves into oblivion. Some of those miners never left at all. Their graves still sit nearby, names nearly erased by time. Number 6, Old Shasta. In the 1850s, Old Shasta was one of the most important cities in Northern California. People called it the Queen City of the North. It had hotels, businesses, courthouses, and more brick buildings than almost anywhere else north of San Francisco. Even the famous Ghirardelli Company once operated a store there. Old Shasta should have survived, but one decision destroyed everything. The railroad came to the region and skipped the town completely. Instead, the tracks were placed through a neighboring settlement called Poverty Flats. That settlement became modern-day Redding. Old Shasta slowly died. Businesses closed. Residents moved away. Streets emptied. Now the remains sit frozen in silence. A granite jail stands empty. Roofless structures stare into the sky. Cemeteries hold the forgotten dead of the gold rush era. One railroad route changed history forever. Number 5. Bennetteville. High in the Sierra Nevada mountains, nearly 10,000 feet above sea level, lies one of California's most isolated ghost towns, Bennetteville. Miners came here searching for silver and believed enormous riches waited inside the mountains. They dug massive tunnels deep into the rock. Cabins, bunkhouses, and stores were built around the operation. But the deeper they dug, the more money they lost. Eventually, the company collapsed under the cost of the project. And then, almost overnight, everyone vanished. What makes Bennetteville eerie is how complete it still feels. Cabins remain standing. Doors remain shut. Rusted equipment still rests where workers abandoned it over a century ago. It looks less like a ruin and more like a place waiting for people to return. But nobody ever did. Number 4. Eagle Mountain. This town feels wrong for one reason. It doesn't look ancient. Eagle Mountain looks recent enough that people should still be living there. Built in 1948 by industrialist Henry Kaiser, the town was created to support a massive iron mine in the Mojave Desert. Thousands of people lived here. There were schools, homes, shopping centers, a bowling alley, even a baseball field. For decades, the mine thrived. Then in the 1980s, operations shut down. Residents left. But the story became darker after that. The abandoned shopping center was converted into a prison by the California Department of Corrections, a prison inside a ghost town. In 2003, a violent riot inside the prison left 2 inmates dead. Soon after, the prison closed too. So now Eagle Mountain became something almost impossible. A ghost town inside another ghost town. Empty homes still line the streets. The bowling alley still stands. Faded buildings slowly rot beneath the desert sun. And in 2023, a mystery company purchased the entire town for over $20 million. Nobody really knows why. Number 3, Colonel Allensworth. This story is different from the others because this town wasn't destroyed by greed or bad luck alone. It was destroyed by history. In 1908, Colonel Allen Allensworth helped establish the first town in California founded, financed, and governed entirely by African Americans. His story was extraordinary. Born into slavery in Kentucky in 1842, he secretly learned to read despite laws forbidding enslaved people from education. He escaped, served during the Civil War, rose to become the highest-ranking black officer in the United States Army, and then he built a town, a real community with schools, churches, businesses, and political power. For a moment, it worked. Then the railroad bypassed the town entirely, redirecting commerce to neighboring white communities. The economic damage was devastating. Soon after, Colonel Allensworth died in a tragic accident. Without him, the town weakened further. Drought arrived. The Great Depression followed. World War II changed everything again. Then arsenic was discovered in the water supply. Families slowly abandoned the town. Today, restored buildings remain inside Colonel Allensworth State Historic Park. But what haunts this place is not what survived. It's what could have existed if history had been different. Number 2, Cerro Gordo. High above Death Valley sits a ghost town that secretly helped build Los Angeles itself. Cerro Gordo. Silver was discovered here in the 1860s, triggering a massive mining boom deep in the mountains. At its peak, thousands of miners lived in this isolated settlement. The silver extracted from Cerro Gordo traveled south into a small coastal settlement called Los Angeles. That silver funded banks, businesses, expansion. Without Cerro Gordo, Los Angeles may never have become the city it is today. But like so many boom towns, the resources eventually ran thin. Water became scarce, timber disappeared, mining profits collapsed. By the late 1800s, the boom was over. For decades, Cerro Gordo sat abandoned above the desert. Then in 2018, a writer named Brent Underwood bought the entire town. He moved there alone and began documenting life among the ruins. Then disaster struck. The town's historic hotel burned to the ground while he was living there. Most people would have left. He stayed. And even today, he continues living among the empty buildings and endless silence of Cerro Gordo. Number 1, Body. And finally, the most infamous ghost town in America. Body. Located high in the Sierra Nevada mountains, Body once exploded into one of California's largest and wildest cities. Gold was discovered nearby in 1859. The man responsible, William Bode, died in a snowstorm before he ever witnessed what his discovery became. By 1879, Bode had over 10,000 residents. There were banks, newspapers, hotels, brothels, gambling halls, and more than 60 saloons lining a single street. Violence became so common that locals had a phrase for the regular morning killings. They called it the Body Man for breakfast. Then the gold declined. Businesses closed. Families left. Mines shut down one after another. By the 1940s, Bode was essentially dead. But unlike most ghost towns, Bode was never completely destroyed. More than 100 original buildings still stand today. Inside them are dishes on tables, bottles on shelves, furniture untouched for decades. Time feels frozen there. California State Parks calls it arrested decay. Nothing is restored. Everything is simply left to age naturally. And then there's the curse. According to legend, anyone who steals something from Bode will suffer terrible misfortune. Visitors who take rocks, nails, or artifacts supposedly experience accidents, illness, financial collapse, or personal tragedy afterward. Every year, people mail stolen items back to the park with apology letters describing what happened to them after they left. Rangers keep the letters, entire collections of them, because whether people believe the curse or not, enough strange things have happened to keep the legend alive. And somewhere high above the mountains tonight, Body still waits. Empty streets, silent buildings, frozen memories, a city abandoned by time. California hides nearly 300 ghost towns across deserts, mountains, forests, and valleys. Places where people once lived entire lives. They built homes, opened businesses, raised children, buried loved ones, and then they vanished. But the towns remain, silent, waiting. If this video found you, maybe you were meant to see it. Subscribe, because next time, we go even deeper.